Good Tuesday morning to you. I actually haven't asked you how you're doing. So, how you doing?
I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic.
That's all you'll ever get from Brad, just so anybody, if anybody's curious. Whenever you ask him how he's doing, that's the only thing he'll ever say.
I was I had to go down to Gonzaga the other day, and there's there's kids who like are managers for the basketball team, who like basically just do all the stuff that nobody else wants to do. These kids are like just dedicate their whole lives to like making sure like everything's ready to go for these guys, right? So I walked in and they were like, "Hey, Dr. Brad, how are you today?" And I was like, "You know what, guys, I'm a little tired today." And one of them said, "That's the first time in 4 years that I've known you that you've ever said anything other than 'I'm doing great today.'" And I think it's like I just don't think people realize how important it is how you show up in the world every day. It's like, I mean, you can probably even attest to this. Like even when I'm sick, nobody knows.
Yeah, it's also just on the flip side of that too. Don't you kind of find it a little bit like sometimes it's just a banal like platitude? Oh, I'm good. How you doing? Good. How are you? It's like you don't even put any thought into it. But I think you intentionally do put thought into that. Like
Well, I
that's
think if somebody says, "Hey, how are you doing?" and you're like, "I'm good," or if you're like, "I'm doing great today, man," like it's a
yeah,
great day.
it's how you say it for sure, and the way you say it, and your attitude around it, 100%. Well, let's see how you deal with this little slice, and see how your attitude is after I ask you a couple of questions.
God,
Because
it's already
because
bad.
well, here's what I told ChatGPT to give me 10 questions that would be hard for someone with a PhD to answer, and these are because
If
it's
you ask us anything about like basic human interaction, we won't know it.
well, that's not what this is. Thankfully, it's actually related to this episode since we're doing. Obviously, the episode is on heart disease. So I have some heart disease questions. We're going to see how you do, and I hope that I can stump Brad Dieter. So the first one is, what percentage of myocardial oxygen extraction occurs at rest, and why does this make coronary blood flow uniquely critical compared to other organs? What percentage would you guess?
Okay, so is this asking? Is this question mean? Can you repeat it? Because I'm trying to understand
Yeah.
exactly what it's
What
asking.
what percentage of myocardial oxygen extraction occurs at rest?
80
That's just
percent.
yeah, you nailed it. It says 70 to 80%. Yep. All right. So far, so good. Number two, why can beta blockers paradoxically improve exercise tolerance in patients with ischemic heart disease despite reducing heart rate and contractility?
Um, be, my guess is that what it does is it allows the stroke volume to increase before you start to get increased heart rate.
Okay. This says beta blockers reduce heart rate and myocardial oxygen demand while prolonging diastole. I think I said that right,
That's
which
exactly,
improves
yep,
coronary perfusion time. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So basically,
what,
when you exercise, this is a good cardiovascular exercise physiology thing. There's a couple things that happen. Like when you start to exercise and you get more, like your blood's moving faster, your heart fills and it stretches more.
yeah.
And when it stretches, you get more blood, and so you get
Yeah.
more blood per contraction, right? So as you exercise, your blood demand goes up. So you have two ways that you can meet that. It's larger stroke volume or greater heart
Mm-hmm.
rate.
Mm-hmm.
So generally speaking, when you're out of shape, you have a lower stroke volume, so your
Mm-hmm.
heart rate has to be higher. As you get in better cardiovascular shape or endurance shape, you
Ah,
have a
that makes
larger
sense.
stroke volume. So that's why, like, at the same
Gotcha.
level of workload, somebody who's in shape versus out of shape has a lower heart rate
For sure. That makes total
because their
sense.
stroke
Yeah.
volume is. It's like they just have a bigger pump, so it doesn't
Yeah.
have to pump as frequently.
Gotcha. Which explains why the more you exercise, the longer you do it and the more consistent you are, it becomes easier and easier because you're more efficient. Your heart is better at producing or at stroke volume goes up, and you're saying that your heart essentially just doesn't have to work as hard and it expands more, right?
Doesn't have to
So I think
work as frequently.
as frequently. Gotcha. We'll do a couple more and then we'll move on with it. But there's some other good ones here. Why is diastolic blood pressure sometimes a stronger predictor of coronary perfusion than systolic blood pressure?
Because diastolic pressure relates to how um what's the word I'm looking for here? It's like how compliant your heart is. So it's
Yeah.
how well it's responding to stress.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what this is saying. Coronary perfusion occurs primarily during diastole when myocardial relaxation allows blood flow through coronary vessels. Therefore, diastolic pressure is a key determinant of coronary perfusion. Um, this relationship flips in older adults with stiff arteries, where elevated systolic pressure and widened pulse pressure become stronger predictors of cardiovascular risk. Interesting. Um,
I should have been a cardiologist, except for I have no desire to be a cardiologist.
yeah, I mean, you are very, you do know your stuff.
I mean, I would hope so.
Well,
I did spend a lot of years of my
did
life
you?
doing nothing but thinking about.
Yeah. Was this one of the areas that you did a lot of extensive study on in school?
My the lab I did my doctoral work on did uh, pressure related hypertrophy in people with
Mm.
diabetes and uh, heart failure.
Here's a question that's kind of on the flip side. Why does arterial stiffness preferentially increase systolic blood pressure without proportionally increasing diastolic pressure?
Because what happens is when your arteries are more restrictive, like they're less
Hmm.
compliant,
Hmm.
you're basically systolic blood pressure is when you're squeezing and you're
Yeah.
pushing. What is it pushing against?
Hmm.
So when you have no compliance in your arteries where your blood's going out to, it's like pushing against a harder pipe.
Yeah. Again, pretty much like so. The answer that this gives is increased arterial stiffness leads to faster pulse wave velocity and earlier wave reflection, augmenting systolic pressure.
Yeah. I'm trying to
I'll
use
give you
words
two.
that like I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'll go. We'll go two more, and then we'll move on. I promise. What is the physiological mechanism by which atrial fibrillation increases stroke risk, even in the absence of detectable atrial thrombus on imaging?
It increases your risk for clots.
Well, I don't see the word clot, but maybe this is. I'll give you what it says, and then you're probably talking about the same thing. But atrial fibrillation causes atrial mechanical dysfunction and blood stasis, particularly in the left atrial appendage, leading to microthrombus formation and endothelial dysfunction.
Yeah.
Is
My
that essentially saying the same thing?
thrombus is a clot.
Is it? Oh, okay. I didn't. Okay, gotcha. Okay, let's see. Last one. Let's see. What do I want to use? What do I want to go with? Okay. How does chronic inflammation accelerate atherosclerosis independently of LDL cholesterol levels?
It increases I mean, it basically, the lining of your arteries and your vessels have cells,
Hmm.
right? And so and they're basically like stuck together like this. Um, and so when you have inflammation, it basically increases the rate at which stuff gets into your intimal space. So that space between your cells and like the structural part of your vasculature. So it increases the rate at which plaques form because you basically open up that process. Plus, you increase the oxidation of the cholesterol that's there, etc.
Yeah, this is no, these are good. These were good questions to lead into our topic. So if anyone is was feeling doubtful as to whether we'd be able to talk about heart disease in this episode, don't doubt anymore. This should be very productive, and we hope to learn you a lot.
Basically, Dylan wanted to quiz me to see if I was
If you had the
qualified to talk
credentials,
about this
yeah,
topic today.
if you had the creds.
Uh,
Well, I was posting and I've posted a couple times in the group that hey, like you guys should listen because we know that what 80%, I'll just say we'll round, but about 80% of the people in our group are women. And so I said, hey, ladies, listen up. The number one killer of women in the United States is heart disease. And it continues to be. And so I was like, this is a very important topic I think you should tune into. We'll try to tell you everything you need to know and like what can you do about it.
you know what my
Um,
joke is? The
what's
number
that?
one driver of death among women is their
Men,
husbands
their
driving them
husbands?
crazy.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm sure my wife is just like, oh my god, I can't believe I have to live with this guy every day.
Well, that's what my wife thinks. The this is actually purely coincidental. I asked my wife over the weekend. I can't remember what we were talking about, but I was like, "Hey, I don't mean to sound like morbid, but like, what do you think you're going to die from someday? I'm like, I hope we both live until we're 80 or 90, but like, what do you think will be your cause of death? And she thought about it for a minute and she said, heart attack. I was like, okay. So like, I think
It's gonna be her eyes are gonna get stuck from rolling them at some bad joke you made.
probably. But so this, anyways, that my point is, this is it's a good, it should be a very good, informative episode. We've done this topic before, but I thought it was worth a revisit. And I turned 40 in about a month and a half. And so, Brad, one of the things that you said to me, I will never forget it, and it's stuck out with me ever since. Do you remember, maybe, I don't know, maybe a year ago, I can't remember exactly what episode we were doing, but you were talking about how they've dug up mummies and they were like, you could tell from the like from 30 years old to 40 that by 40 in those 10 years you could definitely see advanced signs of atherosclerosis, right? And I was like, well, damn. I'm so as I've approached 40, that's one of the things that I keep thinking of, is like, well, shoot, this is something I really need to pay attention to or be aware of. So it's just been on my mind. I thought this would be another good time to do it. So why don't we just first dive into, just define heart disease for us? That's How would you succinctly put it?
Um, I would say it is. I mean, the way we define it, like technically, is the process of plaque buildup in the arteries and vessels in your cardiovascular system. Right. There's also dysfunctions of your heart specifically, right? Like you can have fibrosis, you can have contractile issues, you can have all sorts of stuff like that.
So it's not really just one singular, it could be a multitude of, okay. And this is essentially an accumulation of life and the way you live and the things that you eat, how active you are, that lead up to these heart issues, which we can get into. But yeah, it's essentially a process, not a sudden event, right? It's accumulation
Yes.
of a process. Okay. So again, common types: coronary artery disease, heart attacks, heart failure. Am I missing anything else?
There's like cerebrovascular disease,
Okay.
peripheral artery disease.
Okay.
Yeah, you said congestive heart failure,
Okay.
and there's just so many. It's basically, are the pipes rusty or is the pump bad, or is the electrical circuits in the pump not working? Like that's heart disease is all of those things.
Okay.
Any one of
Oh,
those things.
okay. So let's dive into, let's start with how this develops and what our age has to do with it. What's happening inside the body over time. Like that's what I want. That's kind of what I want to dive into first. I think you already talked about the stiffening of the arteries. You've got plaque buildup. There's inflammation. So primarily, what are the things that cause heart disease, and how do, at least for most people, like what would you say is the most common reason why people develop this? If you had to boil it down to a few single things, or however you would elaborate on.
If I could use two words to describe it,
Sure.
entropy and inevitability.
Okay. And for those that might be wondering what, well, go ahead. I'll let you elaborate on that.
I mean, our body is in, it's a super complex organism, right? And it's always in the state of like things are going wrong and things are being fixed, right? We're being bombarded by UV radiation, we have oxidative stress, we have like our DNA is miscopied, uh, particles are ending up in the wrong spaces in the wrong places, and so our body's like constantly fixing those things, right? It's sort of like your house, right? Like you're always cleaning your house, you're always, having little things repaired, you're replacing the service valve for your HVAC system that went out in the middle of winter. Not that that just happened to me.
Cleaning up after the kids all the time. That's, yep.
Yeah, right. And so, like, you do a pretty good job of like getting it back to brand new, fairly often, right? But over 100 years, like, eventually, that just like
It just adds up.
there's wear and tear, right?
Yeah.
And so, your body is a little bit the same way, right? And heart disease is this process of you have like I'd have to go look at it. I'd have to go like look at the exact numbers, but you have like miles of surface area of your vasculature, right? Like your arteries, your vessels, etc. Right? Capillaries too, but you don't really get atherosclerosis in your capillaries that causes like heart attacks, right? That's not really how that works. Um, but over time, just the entropy of life accumulates, right? You end up getting a random cholesterol particle in your, you know, in your vasculature that then like calcifies, right? And that just accumulates over time. And so this is really the reason why like I say age, or I say inevitability and entropy, right? Just over enough time, all these random things that happen in your body just accumulate. And it's really the result of entropy, because just chaos in your body and the ability to repair things is not perfect. And so that's what happens, right? And atherosclerosis is a specific process, right? I'm going to share a graph with you. This is for something else that I was working on. This may end up as a macro zinc thing at some point, but is this it? So this is the role of age in health and disease. So when we look at chronic disease, the average age is basically before 30. It's very rare that you end up with quote unquote chronic or lifestyle diseases, right? Because most of these are the accumulation of risk over time, right?
Mhm.
Type 2 diabetes, sarcopenia, osteoporosis, heart disease, osteoarthritis, cancer, stroke, Alzheimer's, all of these things are basically the result of entropy and inevitability, right? And now there's things that you can do to push that out, like what how old you're going to get when these disease processes accumulate enough to where they're noticeable. And there's things you can do that make it so you're going to experience them younger. And they're directly related to either reducing the amount of entropy or risk exposure or improving your body's ability to fight this off or repair it. Like those are the two things that can do it. And so when you think about heart disease, like what you're really trying to do is minimize the risk accumulation and maximize your body's ability to like repair or fight off that entropy.
So what I'm hearing is one of the ways that you can fight this entropy, and you're never gonna like it's just always gonna
Don't
that part's
age.
inevitable,
Don't
right?
experience time.
Which is so right. I was gonna say like that's obviously not possible. So all we can do
Says who?
is all we can do is well says the laws of physics, second law of thermodynamics. All we can do is slow that down, right? And so what I'm hearing is you can slow this process, or you can force your body to repair better
Mm-hmm.
through exercise is one of them. Maybe the single biggest factor, right? Exercise, maintain a good body weight, and these other lifestyle behaviors that we often talk about, smoking, drinking, things like that. You really want to minimize those things, because what you're saying is the goal is to give your body the best the best chance it can to like give it reasons to continually repair itself optimally. If you don't, then the wear and tear just adds. It's like your car. I mean, if you take your car to the mechanic a lot and you keep it up to date, and you get the oil change regularly and you just get it serviced regularly, it's going to last a lot longer than if you just let it go to hell.
Yeah.
Same concept.
I mean, yeah, the third piece is you can make your body more resilient to accumulating
Yeah.
damage, right?
Right.
Like, let's say you take somebody and they both have the same amount of quote unquote heart disease, atherosclerosis, whatever, because of, let's say, one person is genetic, just they have a predisposition, whatever. Another person is primarily lifestyle. One of them has great cardiovascular capacity. They're in really good shape. And then you take somebody who's very overweight, very metabolically dysregulated, very sick. Like their health outcomes and their likelihood of dying from cardiovascular disease are very different despite having the same level of disease process.
Right. So where I want to ask you a couple of questions that maybe it's a complicated answer, but I think we always do a pretty good job of boiling it down to as simple as we can. But when we talk about what causes heart disease, where do the two of the biggest, I think, I don't know if it's a misconception, but there's this people have this sort of this impression that cholesterol that your cholesterol levels play a huge role, and that if you're insulin resistant, that plays a huge role. So how much truth is there in that? Like what, as far as like cholesterol, let's just start with cholesterol. What role does cholesterol play in heart disease? And like to the point where should we be concerned about, oh, that food has a lot of cholesterol in it? Like, or is it more about our overall balance?
So the hard part about answering that question is, and this is why I think people don't understand it. You've basically smuggled in a lot of assumptions in that one question, right?
Mm-hmm.
One, you're smuggling in the idea of a single thing leads to the cause of cardiovascular
Mm-hmm.
disease.
Mm-hmm.
Two, you're smuggling in dietary cholesterol meaningfully impacts
Yes.
circulating cholesterol. And
Right.
C, that your that cholesterol per se, like the general term, is a good
Mm-hmm.
way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is none of those are true,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let me see if I can pull up this slide. I've got it here somewhere.
And this is what I think surprises a lot of people, and it's really kind of the opposite of what you've been led to believe.
Well, yes and no. And then this is where like I have a lot of gripes with the other side of the aisle who people are like, "Oh, heart disease, cholesterol doesn't do anything with heart disease." I'm like, "Well, that's also not true."
Not
Right?
one side or the other.
It's just like people can't think critically. Okay. So, this is from a presentation that I give far too frequently, but
Oh yes,
there's
I've seen
multiple
this.
things that contribute to the process of atherosclerosis, which is basically how we develop plaque slash calcification in our vessels, which is what a lot of people think about when they think about heart
Yeah,
disease, right?
yeah.
There's multiple things that influence it, right? It's one, what is the integrity of the cells that are lining your arteries and vessels, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is how much stuff is floating around in your blood that can get in there, right? The third thing is what is the overall metabolic condition of your body such that the things that get in there, one, don't get out, or two, end up turning into bad things in there,
That's a yeah,
right? So, like,
yeah.
let's just say you have perfect cellular integrity, right? Nothing can get in there. It doesn't matter how much cholesterol you have, right? I mean, nobody ever has perfect integrity there, but like that's a way to
It's the
think about it,
example you're
right?
making. I get you. Yeah,
Two is if you take two people who have similar ability for things to get in that like what we call intimal space,
yeah.
if somebody has a lot more cholesterol bouncing around, the likelihood of a particle ending up in there is higher than somebody who has low cholesterol, right? Three, what is your overall metabolic state such that the stuff that gets in there can't get out, right? Or ends up turning quote unquote bad. What one of my colleagues, Jeb Stewart Johnston, always loves my presentations because my graphs are always very simple, and it's like I just simplify things down to like badness and goodness in my graphs. Like bad thing happened, good things happen. So I always just refer to like badness instead of getting super complicated. So like if you have hyperglycemia, high levels of oxidative stress and inflammation, and high blood pressure, you're basically going to increase the likelihood that things get in there and
Hmm.
those things end up being oxidized or turn into calcifications or plaques or things like that. So it's a combination of all three of those. Okay, so
You,
there's that. Then there's the not all cholesterol is the same,
right.
right? Um, to keep this very high level, LDL is generally considered quote unquote bad cholesterol
Right.
because what LDL is doing in your body is it's taking cholesterol from your liver and distributing it to the various parts of your body. Right? So you have more that's transported to your tissues in which it may end up in these spaces it doesn't need to be, right? HDL is returning that cholesterol back to your liver to where it's going to be recycled. So we consider that good because it's moving stuff out of circulation back to like be recycled in your body, right? So
Yeah.
basically think about it like you're taking your LDL is putting your um, LDL is the Amazon guy bringing packages to your house and you're accumulating cardboard in your garage. And HDL is the garbage man who's picking up your wife's cardboard, right? I just use that example because in my house that's how it works, right? Um, so there's those pieces too, right? And I think a lot of people don't like think about that, and it's really the overall metabolic milieu you have that relates to how atherogenic is your profile. Um, and then the third piece is, what did I say the third piece was? Was this like your overall metabolic state? Is that what I said? Oh no, the third piece was dietary cholesterol impacting
What's
um,
your overall levels?
your overall cholesterol levels. Here's what we know about that. Your overall state of energy balance and metabolic health has a much larger impact
Mhm.
on your cholesterol lipid profile, which includes total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglycerides, ApoB, whatever, all this stuff that people get fancy about. That has a much higher predictor of that than the dietary cholesterol you consume. In fact, so much so that the American Heart Association has basically decided that focusing on dietary cholesterol doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like if you're consuming a very low cholesterol diet, but you're consuming 4,000 calories a day and you're not exercising, it doesn't matter,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And so it's really like, what is the overall metabolic health of your body? That's going to determine more of your triglyceride cholesterol profile than anything else.
So then, would it be fair to say that your answer would be similar to everything you just went over if I asked you about heart disease risk factor from someone who's diabetic or has chronically high blood sugar? Is it kind of the same overall concept? Like, I guess my question is, do diabetics are they at a greater risk just by
Yes.
simply being diabetic? Okay.
Yes. And it comes down to, um, generally speaking, people who have type 2 diabetes, especially, they have higher rates of their blood
Inflammation.
pressure's higher, right?
Hmm.
They have higher chronic inflammation.
Hmm.
They have higher levels of oxidative stress. Their LDL, HDL profile is not great. They have
Right.
higher triglycerides. And so they're just like their whole overall metabolic milieu is making it such that their the whole environment is more atherogenic, right? So the
They're
likelihood that things are going to end up in the space
yeah.
in those artery walls and then be calcified or turn into plaques increases, right? It's
Gotcha.
um, so one of the questions that I've gotten a lot in the group, and I'll kind of want to talk about this here in a bit, is people say, "Hey, like cholesterol panels don't tell you the whole thing. You need to focus on your like apolipoprotein profile." Well, it turns out that things like that have a larger effect on risk when your overall metabolic situation is bad,
Yeah.
right? So, like,
I
if
know
you
that.
have particles that are like smaller, denser, and more likely to get into those spaces, well, that risk increases a lot if you have like very poor like vascular integrity, you have high rates
Right.
of inflammation, you have high blood pressure, you have high oxidative stress. That risk is magnified. Where if you're like generally considered normal healthy, that slightly elevated ApoB profile doesn't carry as much risk. So it's like you have to consider all of these things together. And this is the
Yeah.
problem with like when people go to their GP and they get their labs back and it's like, "Oh, I'm putting you on a statin because your cholesterol's over X number." You're like, "Okay." Like I get it that there's like, you have to treat to target. There's the algorithms. This is a CYA. This is like what the standard of practice is. But a lot of times you have to like consider the whole profile, right?
Yeah.
I have a healthy body weight. My VO2 is great. Um, my BMI, my body adiposity is great. My HDL levels are really high. My triglycerides are really low. My blood pressure is really low. So actually, like my overall risk is probably 30% less than normal. So like
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to take a medication to treat just this one number, but you have to consider all of it. Right? Now the other case is like let's say your blood pressure is high, your triglycerides are through the roof, you have insulin resistance, and your cholesterol is like slightly above normal. Like that's a much different situation.
Yeah.
And so I
For
think it's
sure.
really understanding like it's this full spectrum of your metabolic profile that
Yeah, for
really
sure.
determines overall risk.
So this plaque buildup that you were talking about a little bit ago, when you have that, can we undo that, and how so?
Um, it doesn't appear that you can substantially reverse it. Like there may be modest reversals, but a lot of it is permanent because
Really?
it gets becomes calcified.
And you can't
Right? So
remove the calcifications?
yeah, at least from what I've seen.
Hmm. Okay.
There may be like updated literature now that's like they've developed some drugs or they're working on it. Um,
Do they do any sort of surgical procedures to remove plaque?
yes.
Okay. So that,
Usually, what they do though is they don't remove it; they just put stents in.
well, that's interesting. Okay.
I mean, that's
So
what they do when you have a heart attack, right? They just put in a stent around it.
yeah, I mean, well, so I wanted to dive into kind of some of the preventative measures and how much can be, how much of this damage can be undone. But I think there was something you were saying you wanted to dive into and talk about first. What was it you were wanting to chat about?
Can't remember.
You mentioned something, but it's all good. But I mean, I think that's, again, selfishly, I'm kind of wanting to talk about that area because, again, as I approach 40, I'm sure that if if I were if I were to die tomorrow and they did an autopsy, I bet they would, just because of my age, through just as you progress through life, there would be some sort of, there would be a sign of atherosclerosis, just because, not because I've lived unhealthily, just because, again, the age. And so that's why I asked that question. Is like, well, what can I do? What can I do about this? I'll tell you that in my family, my dad's side, his dad died of a heart attack at 60. My dad is 67, healthy as an ox as far as I can tell, but his brother has atherosclerosis. And so I think, there's heart disease in the family. And so that's something I'm very much, aware of. So what do I got to do, Dr. Brad? Tell me.
Before we go to that, here is a paper that I just looked up. I have not read this because this seems crazy, but the title is Calcification in Coronary Artery Disease Can Be Reversed by EDTA Tetracycline Long Term Chemotherapy.
Chemo? Really?
None of that sounds fun or good. I would have to really read into this. And
Huh.
for all intents and purposes, you really like reducing your coronary artery calcifications pretty unlikely. But you can slow the progression, that's for sure.
How
Um,
long until we have nanobots that can go into your bloodstream and clean up the calcification?
that's a good question. I know that that's been like the first paper published on like nanobot technology was in like the 80s or 90s, and like not much has been done.
Oh, so
Um,
it's okay. Okay.
sort of like fusion. It's been worked on for 100 years, and we're like,
Oh, like that we haven't
there's
made much progress in it. I got you. I see what you're saying.
uh,
Yeah.
um, what can you do? I mean, I think
And when I say you, I mean obviously just the general you. Like, what can people,
I mean it's
take
really
away?
fairly simple. Go get like a complete lab panel done and identify like what are my major risk points, right?
This is
Is
something
it
just your GP can do.
yeah,
Yeah.
is it like okay, what is my like normal cholesterol profile? Okay, are there things here that I need to focus on to reduce my risk? Do I have an insulin resistance problem? Like try to figure those things like what is my high risk point? And then it's maintain a healthy body weight,
Hmm.
engage in cardiovascular training. Like, unfortunately, you have to do cardio to keep your cardiovascular system strong and healthy. Like, I know that sucks. A lot of people don't like running or
Yeah, play
cycling.
basketball or football. You're good.
Yeah. Um, minimize smoking and drinking. And
Try to
that's
minimize stress.
that's most of it, right?
You work with a lot of athletes. A lot of
Yes.
a lot of kids who are going to go on to be pro athletes, and you have worked with people that have gone on to be pro athletes. Have you ever seen any studies or data that shows that these pro athletes tend to live longer than the rest of the population? Is there any correlation there? Just because of how
Mm,
active they were? I wonder if
I
that's
I don't know, but the other thing is I'd have to go look, but I could also see the opposite, right? After they get done with their
Really?
career, they just don't do
Oh,
anything,
that they, yeah, yeah, I see what you're
right? And a
saying.
lot of it's because like
That
their knees are so shot,
they're
their back
tired
is
and they're
so
shot. Yeah,
shot, like
for
they just
sure.
can't,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So I think a
to
lot of
that
it
point, I mean
depends. I
that
think
point
it's really
that's
individualized.
sports just put a lot more wear on you though too. I mean, let's point that out. There is a an extreme to that too, right? Like you could exercise and be so active that you actually end up doing more damage to your joints and your and like it could cause more harm than you intended. So
Yeah.
there's a balance there for sure.
There's an interesting phenomenon. I gotta find this because I actually published an editorial on this. So cardiovascular training slash endurance training has a Goldilocks effect, right? In which no exercise is really bad for you. Too much exercise is also not great for your heart,
This
right?
is
Like there
yeah.
becomes a point where too much actually increases your risk of specific cardiovascular things, and it's primarily um,
Doesn't it shrink your heart too?
atrial fibrillation. No, usually you get eccentric hypertrophy.
Okay.
So you do have to accumulate a lot of hours, but it's something like more than 2,000 hours of high intensity continuous exercise during your lifetime is where you start to see an increased risk of atrial fibrillation.
More
Now,
than
that's a
2,000.
lot of high intensity exercise.
So this uh, would this be? I guess what I'm trying to think of what would constitute as that, like long distance runners who are training all the time, maybe.
Um,
I'm just trying to think of. I'm trying to visualize what that would look like.
yeah, I mean, it would have to be like you are like a high level marathon slash half
Yeah.
marathon runner or cyclist who trains for 20, 30 years.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's
Yeah,
very extreme.
I mean, it takes a long time to accumulate that
Yeah.
much, right? Like, let's say
Okay.
even like, let's say you're a professional triathlete. The amount of hours, let's say you train 20 hours a week, maybe 25. That's a lot. That's a lot of training volume, right?
For sure.
You're maybe spending 2 hours during that week in like the high intensity
That.
space,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Maybe 3, maybe 4. So that would be, I mean, 500 weeks. Like that's a lot of training, right?
For
Now the
sure.
people who probably have that risk are like professional basketball players, maybe professional soccer players who have 10, 15, 20-year careers,
Where
et
they're
cetera,
just
because they do higher
constantly moving.
intensity stuff.
Yeah.
But even that, like during a basketball game, let's say you play 40 minutes in a game, probably 10 of that is like real high intensity. The rest is like pretty moderate
Just yeah.
continuous. But
Yeah.
yeah, we do know that for sure.
Why? Let me ask you a straight up question.
I'm gonna put a link to the editorial I wrote a while ago.
Why? Why is it the number one killer in women and not men? Like why women specifically? Do you think? Like there must be some reason why it's so prevalent among the leading cause why it's the leading cause of death in women. Like what is it about women that it seems to be the cause for?
Let me hold on. Can you?
I mean, it must be something about women in general and just the lifestyle that is different that causes this.
What
But
is
what do
the?
we think?
Before I answer this question, I want to see what the actual like relative risk difference is.
Between men and women?
Yeah. Men face a higher overall risk of developing coronary heart disease, 33% by age 40. However, women have a 20% higher risk of dying or developing heart failure within 5 years after a first heart attack.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I feel like that's maybe not entirely true.
Why do you say that?
I mean, what? I mean, your state. Let me see this.
You're
I
like
gotta dig into this.
you're saying that the premise that I'm suggesting might not actually be the case.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
And I think it varies quite a bit. Like I think it's like coronary heart disease versus like myocardial infarction versus whatever. Um, Heart failure. Men develop more heart failure.
Well,
I
I'm
have
gonna
to look into
ask.
this a little bit more. Because I remember like learning about this, and I remember thinking like, because it's been so long since I've looked at this, like either the difference wasn't as big as people say it was, but I'll do some digging and get back to you next week. But this is why when people say things, you ask questions, because sometimes what is considered canon is not in fact considered canon.
So I just asked our AI friend to give me some explanations as to why women are at risk for this, and I won't read everything, but I'll kind of give you the bullet points. And it says women are absolutely at risk, and in a lot of ways, it's under-recognized and underdiagnosed. Here's the big picture without the fluff. Hormonal changes matter, especially menopause. Estrogen helps protect blood vessels by improving cholesterol balance and keeping arteries more flexible. But after menopause, estrogen drops, LDL cholesterol rises, arteries stiffen, inflammation increases. So the result is cardiovascular risk accelerates after menopause, not gradually, it actually jumps. Two,
Well, I mean,
with,
the hard part with that too is there's also just age, right? Like if
yeah,
risk
right. Yeah,
accumulates
that's
over
true.
time,
I
of course, someone in their 70s is more likely to have heart disease than someone in their 40s. Like that's just
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, of course that is a factor. It says women present differently than men. Heart disease research historically focused on men, so symptoms in women were often missed. Women are less likely to have the Hollywood heart attack, aka crushing chest pain. More common symptoms include shortness of breath, fatigue, nausea or indigestion, jaw, neck, or back pain, lightheadedness, which are easier to dismiss and often are. Certain risk factors hit women harder. Some conditions raise heart disease risk in both sexes, but the impact is stronger in women. Diabetes, high blood pressure, smoking, and autoimmune diseases. Pregnancy is a cardiovascular stress test. That's an interesting point. Complications during pregnancy aren't temporary problems, they're early warning signs. History of gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, and pregnancy related hypertension equals a higher lifetime risk of heart disease later on. That's interesting. I did not know that.
Well,
Had
yeah,
you heard that before?
yeah. I mean, what is a good way to stress a circulatory system? Just
Put another
double
being in there.
no, just double the amount of fluid in it. Like when
But,
women are pregnant,
but
like their
yeah,
blood volume increases and their fluid volume increases. So you're basically just stressing and stretching the whole system. But
yeah,
to go back to the like, I mean, this is where I think this is where details matter, right? People say things like, "Oh, X," and it's like, well,
a little more nuanced than that,
yeah, right. It's like,
like a lot of
okay,
things.
what are the deaths? What are the outcomes? What are the treatments? What are the symptomology? Like all of those things are very different. So
You
I
got a
think it's
comment.
like, yeah, I
You
think
got a
it's also
comment, by the
important
way.
to remember like one of the hard parts with the medical literature is this is like two contradictory statements in one, so I'll just say it. When a study is published is very important for context. For example, like let's say you look at how effective a medication is for preventing heart attacks and it's published in 2024. Like the way you interpret that data is entirely different than a study that was published in 1990 for two
Yeah.
reasons. One, the population of people is way different.
Mm-hmm.
And two, pretty much anybody who is at risk for cardiovascular disease now is already on a bunch of medications that meaningfully reduce risk, right? So they're usually on a statin, they're usually on a blood pressure medication, and sometimes they're on like a glycemic lowering agent, right? So you've basically reduced a lot of risk already. So any medication that's added on top of those, the likelihood that it does anything more is very low, right? That's so. But in the 1990s, like a statin and a blood pressure medication, like maybe wasn't standard of care, or the requirements were different, right? So that patient population had very different polypharmacy. So you've got to think like those things matter. Now the other thing is, I'm a big believer. Whenever I write stuff and people are like, oh, you can't cite that study, it's too old, it was published in 1985. I'm like, well, it depends. Like if I'm citing a study of like a very mechanistic study of like, oh, here's how much glycogen the body uses over 30 minutes
Yeah,
at this exercise. Like that doesn't
it's going to be
change. Like
for
it's
sure, for sure.
yeah. Okay. But then the other side of this is one of the major reasons why we haven't had major advances in medications for things like cardiovascular disease or kidney disease for a long time, because most of the risk was already reduced by the very like low hanging fruit medications. And so in order to see like, let's say you develop a new medication and it gives you an extra 10% reduction in risk when you've already reduced it 85%, right? Like how much money does that save the medical system? Very little. How much money does that cost the pharmaceutical system
Right,
to develop it? A ton.
right.
And so it's like people just really have to understand like there's the context in which something is studied really matters.
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to mention somebody did comment women are more likely to delay calling for help, have atypical or less recognized symptoms, and be misdiagnosed or undertreated, all of which increase damage and mortality risk. So yeah, really, that's a good point. That's I think very true, and one of the things that our AI friend had mentioned too. So thank you for the comment, Jersey Deb. What was I going to ask too? Oh yes, so these medications, Brad, that people are on, these statins and blood pressure medications, are those typically like once you're diagnosed with whatever it is, are you typically on those medications for life, or can you get off of them?
It depends,
So you
right?
could get off of them, but some of them are on them for life.
It depends on your physician, it depends on you, it depends on a lot of things, right? There's a lot of perspective of you're going to be on them for life because they do reduce risk. There's a lot of perspective of, hey, let's try to keep the medication load to a minimum if lifestyle changes get you into a low risk category.
Yeah,
It's just all it
it
really
just depends.
depends. Yeah.
Is do we know if the U.S. is the number one country in the world for heart disease as cause of death, or are there other? I mean, surely there must be other countries that are high up there too, but I wonder if we're leading. Do you know?
Um
I would bet Mexico is probably up there.
I would have to go double
I would
check. I
bet.
mean, I think part of it is we have such good critical care in the United States that the likelihood
Yeah,
of
that's
people
true.
surviving heart attacks and like living longer and then dying from other causes is pretty high. So I
Yes,
would have
there
to go.
is.
I mean, it's possible that there's other countries with less advanced critical care in which people die more frequently from it.
Yeah,
But I'd have to go. I don't know the exact data off the top of my head. Like I don't know
yeah.
what the mortality
But
rate is in the U.S. versus China versus India versus Mexico versus the Middle East versus Russia versus I'd, Japan. I'd have to go look. But I mean,
but I
I
wonder what you would
randomly
see.
pulled this off. I randomly pulled a New England Journal of Medicine article off my desk the other day when I had like 10 minutes between meetings. I was just flipping through it. And it was, I think it was published in like the mid to late 90s. And it talked about the reduction of deaths due to heart attack and like how much it dropped during the 90s because we developed a lot of these procedures. And like the
Yeah,
survival rate increased dramatically.
yeah. I believe that. But I wonder. So what's going through my head is I wonder what you would see if you were to look at um, levels of heart disease, now versus let's say 100 years ago in the United States. Like, would you see dramatically higher rates of it than 100 years ago? And then the second,
Yes. Now, part
and
of
do
that is a surveillance phenomenon
so just able to detect it more. You're saying?
and testing for it.
Yeah, right. So, and that's what I was going to ask. So, irrespective of that, let's take those out of the equation. Do you still think the percentage would be higher today, though? Just
Yes.
like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
mean, part of
obviously
it
them that
is
would just,
the overall metabolic health of our population is worse,
yeah,
which increases the
right,
risk. But then also we're testing for it more. I mean, you got to think
yeah,
100 years ago, we didn't have ways to test for it,
right, right.
right? Like, what if you can't measure via
Yeah, if you can't detect it,
CT or
right,
MRI? Like, how do
yeah,
you, right? I mean,
yeah,
there used to be
yeah,
ways we could test for it, but like, it wasn't very good.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Well, I think the overall takeaway is like it's the same takeaway as a lot of our podcasts when we talk about stuff like this. It always comes down to here's what you need to know: exercise regularly, eat well, and maintain a healthy body weight, and then try not to smoke or drink too much alcohol, and manage your stress. It's like we at this point we sound like a broken record because that's the way to manage a lot of things, but hard to do in today's environment. Harder, I should say, for people to do in today's environment.
Yeah, I
To
mean,
do
I
those
think
things
it's
regularly.
also just like a big part of it's a psychology thing, right? It's sort of like investing, right? The most efficient way to get rich or to get wealthy is to just invest a little bit of money into the broad market every week and then keep doing that and don't do anything else for 40 years, right? The best way to decrease your likelihood of dying from a chronic disease is eat good food, don't eat too much, don't smoke, don't drink, exercise 3 to 5 days a week, don't have a stressful job.
Be around other people you love.
Yeah, depends. I mean, like those are all like behavior habit things, right?
Or if you want to get rich,
This,
you could just do what they did in The Big Short.
yeah, I mean, this is one of my here's one of my critiques slash criticisms of this whole like biohacking. Let me try to transplant my son's blood into my body to live longer approach. Most of your risk of dying is reduced by the very basic things, right? We just talked about those. How much time and money are you spending during the best years of your life trying to optimize for the last 5 years of your life? From 90 to 90. Okay, you lived to 95. You beat the average life expectancy by 5 years. But you spent like all your money and mental energy in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s in and out of doctor's offices getting
Right.
stem cell injections and
Right.
experimental therapies and in hyperbaric chambers and like what? Like just think about that.
Yep.
Like to me that just seems a little crazy.
Not something I do.
Now, if the whole purpose of to do it is to just like build another personal brand and make a bunch of money and use it as a PR campaign, like okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But I mean the reality is the best way to live better longer are those things.
Yeah.
Lift weights, do some cardiovascular exercise, eat really good food, don't eat too much. Try to reduce the amount of like environmental toxins you expose yourself to. Get outside, get some sun, have good relationships.
I wonder. I'm gonna quiz. I got one more question for you. I don't know the answer because I'm gonna look this up. What would you say? What would you say is the if we're looking at the 50 states, which state do you think has the highest life expectancy, and which state has the lowest?
As of today,
Yeah.
Colorado's got to be up there.
Wow. That's not on the list.
Huh,
And I mean, not in the top 10. Believe it or not.
that's interesting.
I I would agree with you.
Um, I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
This is
So
AI
high.
generated, isn't it?
Yes, but it looks it up. It is researching. So highest life expectancy per state, Hawaii at 79.9 years. But I wonder if that's because retirees move there. Like I don't it's so outside of that it's Massachusetts and then Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Minnesota, New Hampshire. Colorado's
I
not on
don't
there.
believe
In
any
fact,
of that. I don't believe that at
Colorado
all.
Colorado ranks number 15 at 78.8 to 80 years is what their life expectancy is. What
I
would you
don't
say is
believe
the
that.
just telling you. What would you say is the lowest life expectancy state?
I would say Atlanta, Georgia.
Mississippi. So you're not far off. I mean, you're not far geographically. Yeah. Yeah, Mississippi, and then West Virginia and Alabama.
West
Yeah,
Virginia.
Georgia's number 33.
I mean,
Yeah,
this though is
interesting.
like this is the problem with data like that. I mean, go back to the whole blue zones thing. Have you been following that?
No, what is this?
You know how there's like the blue zones where like and the people who live longer live in these like pockets of the world.
Sure.
Well, it turns again they were like, "Oh, it's cuz they follow this diet and this
Oh,
lifestyle." Well,
okay.
it turns out it may just be that a lot of it had to do with like fraudulent data of like misreporting how
Like
many people live to 110 or 120 because of like benefit scams or things like that.
so just cherry picking the data?
No, like fraudulent data.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, you should Google
No.
it. Look up Blue Zones data scam.
When is this? This is like recent? Look this up. Yeah, the secret of yeah. Oh, this is a rabbit hole to go down.
This
Interesting.
is this is where the reading rainbow, the more you know
Yeah.
star comes through.
Reading Rainbow.
Yeah.
Uh, boy, what else haven't we covered? I think we covered a lot. Anybody out there that's watching? Well, actually, no, we just lost some of our viewers for whatever reason. Maybe it's because we said reading Rainbow. But I was going to say, if anybody wanted to comment or had any questions, let us know. We're pretty much up on time, but is there anything else you'd want to add?
We are going to be sending out some marketing material for this, but we do have a symposium slash conference that we will be putting on March 21st of 2026. It will
That'll be
be, I
good.
think we're doing 4 or 5 talks by our coaching
Yeah.
staff. It's going to be a free virtual event. The replays will be available as well, but it'll be way more fun if you're there live. We'll have sign up links here in the next week or two, but keep an eye out for that. That means I have a busy March and April. I have to do
Are you,
that in March. Then I have to go to Arizona for a board meeting in April. Then I have
and
to
it's
go
March
give a present.
Madness.
Then I have to go give a presentation in Las Vegas at the end of April. It's gonna be a lot.
Look at you. I'll meet you in Vegas. I owe you that beer anyway, so I'll just swing over there and we'll go grab a beer. How's that sound? Maybe I'll see if Jay wants to go out there with me. I'm just kidding. I don't want to go to Vegas. Dang it, I forgot what I was going to say. I don't know. It probably wasn't important. Well, I guess that's it. We can duck on out of here. Um, I won't be here next week, so I'm sorry to all you listeners. You'll have to wait an additional week before Brad and I can do another one of these. But we do have a lot of good. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. In the March presentation, are you starting the presentation wrapping for people, or is that at the end?
I'm not giving a presentation.
And I know it's not a presentation; it's like a wrap seminar. Like you're wrapping for people. Are you doing that at the beginning or
No,
the end?
neither.
Not not falling for it. Okay. But if you had to rap for people, what song would you do?
Gangster's Paradise. I know that song word for word, all the way from start to end. Or Hit 'em High from the Space Jam soundtrack.
You want to know something interesting? I found out this past year. Do you know what perfect pitch is or absolute pitch?
Yes.
I went my whole life without realizing I had that. I just thought everyone could hear music and tones the same way. So when you
Oh
said
man.
"Gangster's Paradise," for example, all I thought of was the immediate song comes to my head. I almost started singing in the actual song, and it made me wonder if you're gonna rap that song. I wonder if you could sing it in the right key. Could you do it, Bradley?
Of course. Dylan just uses the podcast as a way to just tell everybody he's got perfect pitch.
I don't. I mean, that's it's not really what I was intending to do, but you brought up Gangster's Paradise.
Let me guess, you've also been to Spain, right?
I'm just gonna like hang up now. Just
All right. Well, on the other side of that spectrum, I can't sing a lick. In fact, my wife tells me I'm not allowed to sing in the house. You would think that's a mean thing to say, but honestly, she's kind of right.
can she sing? Is she good at it? Is she better than you?
Yes, but that is a very, very, very low bar.
Okay.
I have zero musical ability other than rapping.
Well, we'll look forward to listening and seeing your rapping skills in March. All right. I will play this lovely outro music. We'll get out of here. I appreciate you guys. Thank you all for tuning in as always, and we will see you next time.
Cool.
Adios. If I can get this thing going. There we go.